The river roared like thunder, swallowing everything in its path. Jonas spotted a small green form tangled in the roots, a Verdian child fighting for life. His own survival meant nothing in that moment. He gripped the rope tight, spear in hand. "Not this time," he growled. What happens when a lone human risks everything to save an alien child? The floodwaters tore through the mountain pass with brutal force, carrying shattered trees and twisted metal from some distant alien settlement. Each fragment spun like a blade in the current, turning the river into a spinning saw blade of debris. Jonas stood at the edge, boots sinking in mud, eyes scanning the chaos. His gaze locked on movement along the far bank. A flash of green caught in the tangled roots of a fallen tree. A young Verdian female, no older than a human child, fought against the water's pull. Her small frame jerked against the roots, holding her captive, each surge of the current dragging her deeper. Her skin shone emerald in the gray light, her black eyes wide with a fear Jonas recognized instantly. The math came automatically: broken ribs, possible head trauma, hypothermia. All probable outcomes if he entered that water. His own survival instinct screamed at him to step back. The current could break him against the rocks, smash him with debris, drag him under for good. But another memory surfaced. A different river, a different child he couldn't reach in time. The rope felt rough and familiar in his hands, the same type he'd used on a dozen worlds. He drove the spear deep into the riverbed, testing its hold against the current. Every muscle burned as he entered the water. The cold shocked his system, the force nearly tearing him from his anchor immediately. He moved hand over hand along the rope, the current pulling at his legs like some great beast trying to drag him under. Debris slammed against his side, sharp edges tearing at his clothing. He kept his eyes on that small green form, her struggles growing weaker with each passing moment. "Not this time," he growled into the spray, the words barely audible over the roar. The phrase became a rhythm matching his movements, a vow against the water, against loss, against leaving someone behind ever again. His fingers finally closed around a slender green arm, the skin surprisingly cool to the touch. The child went still at his contact, her large black eyes locking onto his. In that moment, something shifted in his chest. The careful solitude he'd maintained for years cracked open. He worked quickly, untangling the roots from around her legs, keeping one hand always on the rope. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, her body limp now against his. The return journey felt longer, the current fighting him for every inch gained. When he finally dragged them both onto the bank, he collapsed beside her, chest heaving, the rope still taut in his bleeding hands. He looked at the small alien form lying motionless beside him, her green skin pale, her breathing barely detectable. The isolation that had protected him for so long was gone, shattered by the decision to enter that water. His solitary existence had fractured the moment her eyes met his, and he knew nothing would ever be the same. Jonas laid the child on the bank, the green skin cold and yielding under his hands. Her breathing had stopped. Every movement presented new risks. He didn't know her anatomy, what pressure points might exist, whether her internal organs were positioned like human ones. Her left arm hung at an unnatural angle, clearly dislocated. Deep gashes along her side leaked thin green fluid that soaked into the mud. He worked by instinct, adapting field medicine techniques to an alien body. The shoulder joint felt familiar enough. He braced her small frame against his knee and applied steady pressure. The pop sounded different than a human joint, softer, like greenwood breaking. Her unconscious form jolted at the motion. He tore a strip from his shirt and fashioned a sling, the fabric supporting bones that felt too light, too delicate for human handling. Movement in the water caught his attention. 3 swamp cats emerged downstream, their 6-legged forms low to the ground. They scented the blood in the water, their flat black eyes fixed on the pair on the bank. Jonas shifted position, putting himself between the child and the predators. His own calf throbbed where debris had torn through his pants, the wound bleeding freely into his boot. The freezing river water had numbed the pain during the rescue, but now it slowed his movements, made his fingers clumsy. He checked the child's pulse at her throat, finding a fluttery rhythm that felt too fast. Her skin remained alarmingly cool. The swamp cats advanced another few meters, their low growls vibrating through the mud. He ignored his own injury and focused on the child. Human resuscitation techniques were his only option. He tilted her head back, noting the unusual placement of what might be air passages. His first attempt produced no response. He adjusted the angle, trying to account for the slightly different structure of her face and neck. The second attempt brought a choking sound, then a sudden intake of breath that sounded like dry leaves rustling. Her black eyes flew open, staring up at him without comprehension. She coughed up river water, the liquid darker than human fluid with a strange silvery sheen. The swamp cats paused their advance, watching the sudden movement. Jonas kept his hand steady on her shoulders, applying just enough pressure to keep her from startling. She looked from his face to the makeshift sling on her arm, to the swamp cats beyond. Her breathing steadied, the panicked rhythm slowing to something more controlled. She didn't try to pull away from his touch. Instead, her good hand came up to touch the bandage he'd placed over the worst gash on her side. This moment became their first communication, not through words, but through the shared understanding of injury and care. The medical improvisation had worked, and in doing so created a bridge between them. The swamp cats, seeing the alertness in both figures, turned and slipped back into the water, leaving them alone on the riverbank. The hut smelled of damp earth and antiseptic. Jonas laid the child on his cot, then assessed his own bleeding calf. 2 patients, 1 med kit. He sorted through his dwindling supplies: 3 sterile pads, half a roll of bandage, a small bottle of iodine solution, painkillers meant for human biology. Every item represented months of careful hoarding, now to be spent in hours. He started with her wounds, the worst first. The iodine solution sizzled when it touched her green skin, causing the flesh around the cut to darken and contract. She flinched, her black eyes widening, but made no sound. Jonas pulled the cloth away immediately, watching the reaction. The antiseptic was too harsh for her physiology, doing more damage than good. He dumped the iodine outside, wasting precious fluid but eliminating the risk. He worked by observation after that, testing small applications of different treatments. A paste made from crushed medicinal leaves caused no reaction, so he spread it over her deepest gash. She watched his hands, her gaze tracking each movement with silent intensity. Fear showed in the tightness around her eyes, the slight trembling of her uninjured hand, but she never pulled away. Her stillness felt like trust, or perhaps just survival instinct matching his own. Her resilience reminded him of his early days on this world, that stubborn refusal to die no matter what the environment threw at him. Each bandage placement taught him something new about her anatomy. The skin over her ribs felt thinner than human skin, more delicate. The green blood clotted faster than human blood, forming a silvery film over wounds. He used less bandage than he would for a human injury, learning as he worked. His own calf needed stitching. The gash ran deep, showing glimpses of white bone beneath the blood. He sterilized the needle with fire, then worked quickly, pulling the flesh together with rough efficiency. The child watched the procedure with calm interest, her head tilted. When he finished, she reached out and touched the neat row of stitches, her fingers gentle. The gesture surprised him, not fear or disgust, but curiosity. Shared pain became their common ground. He gave her a small piece of nutrition bar, the last of his human food. She accepted it without hesitation, chewing slowly while he cleaned his tools. The silence between them felt comfortable now, the tension of stranger danger replaced by something quieter. His carefully guarded supplies had diminished alarmingly, but the trade felt worth it. Night fell outside the hut, the alien constellations appearing through the single window. He rigged a second blanket over her cot, then settled on the floor with his back against the wall. She watched him for a long time before her eyes finally closed, her breathing evening out into sleep. The dynamic had shifted completely. He was no longer just a rescuer, but a caregiver responsible for another life. This responsibility felt both heavy and surprisingly familiar, like putting on an old coat he hadn't realized he'd missed. Dawn brought the sound of multiple feet moving through damp grass. Jonas woke instantly, hand going to the knife at his belt. Through the hut's single window, he counted 6 Verdians approaching in tactical formation. Their spears gleamed in the first light, bodies tense and ready. The leader carried himself differently, broader shoulders, more ornate weapon, the calm authority of command. This was no random patrol. He stepped outside slowly, hands visible, placing himself between the hunters and the hut entrance. The child stood behind him, her good hand gripping his torn pant leg. The lead hunter's black eyes scanned the scene, the human, the injured child, the blood-stained bandages. Weapons remained raised but didn't advance. Recognition flashed across the leader's face when he saw the girl. They spoke in low tones, their language a series of clicks and soft vowels. The child answered from behind Jonas, her voice small but clear. Two hunters moved forward, weapons lowering slightly. They were healers, their hands empty of weapons but full of purpose. They examined Jonas's work on the child's injuries, fingers probing the bandages, the sling, the stitches on his own calf. One healer made a clicking sound of approval at the shoulder relocation. Another pointed to the paste Jonas had used, then produced a different plant from her pouch, one with silver-edged leaves he'd always considered poisonous. She crushed it between her fingers, showing how the sap turned clear when exposed to air, then applied it to the deepest gash. The child relaxed immediately, the tension leaving her small frame. The lead hunter watched this exchange, his weapon now resting against his shoulder. He gestured toward Jonas's medical kit, then to the plants around them. One of the healers demonstrated how to find the silverleaf plant near water sources, how to prepare it for wounds. Jonas showed them his stitching technique, the curved needle and sterilizing method. The lead hunter nodded slowly, the first sign of approval. They understood his actions now, not as threat but as desperate care. The child's status became clear when the hunters bowed slightly as she spoke, their postures shifting from aggressive to protective. She was important. Her survival mattered to the entire group. The lead hunter made a sweeping gesture toward Jonas, then toward the distant mountains where their settlement lay. This changed everything. The human was no longer an outsider to be driven away or eliminated. He had preserved something valuable to them, using methods they could respect even if they weren't their own. The exchange of medical knowledge built a fragile trust, a practical understanding that bypassed language barriers. The lead hunter approached slowly, placing his weapon on the ground between them. He touched two fingers to his forehead, then extended them toward Jonas. The gesture felt formal, significant. The other hunters repeated the motion, their posture relaxing further. The child smiled for the first time, a slight upturn of her mouth that made her black eyes crinkle at the corners. This moment built the first real bridge between their species, not through diplomacy or grand gestures, but through the shared language of survival and healing. The Blue Valley clan had accepted his presence not as a curiosity or threat, but as someone who had proven his value through action. The isolation that had defined Jonas's existence on this world finally began to recede, replaced by something unfamiliar yet cautiously welcome. They began with objects: rock, water, knife. The girl pointed, and Jonas named things in his language. She repeated the sounds perfectly, her voice catching the rhythms easier than he expected. Within days, she moved beyond simple nouns, stringing together basic sentences. Jonas give water became, Jonas gives water to Maya. She'd named herself Maya, the first piece of identity she offered freely. The real challenge came with abstract concepts. Direction meant nothing without shared reference points. North and south held no meaning here. Jonas brought out his compass, the needle swinging steadily toward magnetic north. Maya watched it, head tilted. She placed her hand over the device, her fingertips hovering above the glass. The needle wavered, then swung toward her palm instead. They discovered her people navigated by biological magnetic sense, something humans lost millennia ago. Her word for north translated roughly as blood pull. South became blood push. The compass became their first true teaching tool, a physical object that demonstrated what she felt instinctively. He showed her how the needle always sought alignment, how it could guide travelers across featureless terrain. She in turn taught him spirit songs used for navigation, complex melodies that changed depending on direction and terrain. The songs contained practical information about water sources, rock formations, predator territories. Jonas recorded them on his handheld device, playing them back while matching them to geographical features. What he called science, she called spirit knowledge. Both systems worked. Each new word strengthened their cooperation. When gathering firewood, she could now specify dry wood or green wood. When treating wounds, she could describe pain levels and locations with precision. Her questions revealed a deep curiosity about his methods. Why sterilize tools with fire? Why stitch wounds instead of using healing pastes? Why track animals by footprint instead of scent? Jonas explained germ theory while demonstrating water purification. Maya listened intently, then showed him how her people use specific mosses to filter water naturally. He learned that Verdian biology fought infection differently. Their immune systems worked faster but required certain minerals found in local plants. This explained why his iodine had burned her skin. The communication shifted gradually from necessity to genuine exchange. They spent evenings mapping each other's languages, Jonas writing words in his notebook while Maya drew symbols in the dirt. She learned human concepts of time and measurement. He learned Verdian seasonal cycles and weather patterns. The notebook filled with 2-column entries, human words beside Verdian symbols. This linguistic bridge enabled deeper understanding of their respective cultures. Maya explained that her people valued community knowledge over individual achievement, which explained why the hunters had accepted his medical help once they recognized its effectiveness. Jonas shared how humans often prioritized innovation over tradition, which helped her understand why he'd used unfamiliar methods to save her. The exchange became collaborative rather than instructional. They began developing hybrid terms, words that combined both languages to describe concepts that existed in neither culture alone. A special symbol for shared understanding. A new word for knowledge from another world. The rough bridge of basic communication had become a solid structure of mutual learning, strong enough to support heavier ideas. Their progress in just 3 weeks, he noted, would have taken human linguists years to achieve under formal conditions. The morning fire crackled with different woods now. Jonas preferred dry hardwood for consistent heat, while Maya added green branches that produced aromatic smoke. Their daily routines had become exercises in reciprocal education. He taught her how to bank coals for overnight warmth. She showed him which smokes repelled night insects. Each action carried layers of meaning beyond the practical. His spearing technique caused the first real friction. Jonas demonstrated the human method: balanced stance, two-handed grip, full body rotation for maximum force. The Verdian hunters watched silently. Their way involved shorter spears, thrown from a crouch with wrist snap rather than shoulder strength. Maya took his spear, shook her head, and mimed their technique. The difference wasn't just technical. Their method conserved energy, prioritized stealth over power, minimized movement that might alert prey. Cooking revealed deeper philosophical divides. Jonas cooked meat thoroughly, concerned about parasites. The Verdians ate some meats nearly raw, claiming heat destroyed vital energies. Maya explained that her people believed cooking should enhance natural flavors, not transform them completely. She showed him how to sear meat quickly over high heat while keeping the center cool. He adapted by creating a 2-stage process: partial cooking for safety, then finishing with her method. She insisted on teaching him as he taught her. When he demonstrated knot tying, she required him to learn Verdian weaving patterns in return. Their lessons became exchanges rather than instructions. Elders began appearing at the edges of their activities, observing quietly. The old ones noted how Jonas watched Maya's hands when she worked, how he mimicked her movements with careful precision. His isolation diminished with each shared meal. Where he'd eaten alone for years, he now sat beside Maya, while she explained the significance of different food combinations. Certain roots balanced the effects of specific meats. Some herbs aided digestion when eaten with grains. The Verdians ate in deliberate sequences rather than mixing everything together. Jonas found himself adopting their patterns, noticing improved energy throughout the day. Tool usage evolved into dialogue. He'd start to demonstrate a human tool, and she'd interrupt with the Verdian equivalent. Their comparison of hunting knives became a 2-hour discussion about metallurgy versus crystal-edge tools. His steel held an edge longer. Their crystal blades could be resharpened indefinitely with proper technique. They began experimenting with hybrid designs, steel blades with crystal honing edges. Jonas felt the change gradually. The constant tension in his shoulders eased. The automatic scanning for threats became less frantic. He found himself thinking in terms of we instead of I when planning daily tasks. The hut felt different. Not just a shelter, but a place of exchange. Maya's drawings covered the walls beside his maps, their languages intertwining in visual conversation. This reciprocal learning reshaped his understanding of home. It wasn't a place to defend anymore, but something built through shared practice. The careful boundaries he'd maintained between human and alien ways began to blur. He used Verdian hunting methods in the morning, human navigation in the afternoon, combined cooking techniques at evening meal. Each adaptation made him feel less like a relic from another world, more like a participant in this one. The elders noticed this integration. They began leaving gifts, a better quality spear, a woven water container, medicinal plants they'd previously guarded closely. Their acceptance showed in practical terms, not ceremony. Jonas's value was no longer based solely on saving Maya, but on his willingness to learn their ways while sharing his own. The exchange felt balanced, mutually beneficial. His expertise in certain areas complemented their knowledge in others. The solitary human survivalist had become part of something larger, not through conquest or submission, but through genuine exchange. The concept of home expanded to include this delicate balance of giving and receiving across species lines. Maya insisted they make the journey to Blue Valley. Her clan needed to offer proper thanks, she explained. The ritual mattered almost as much as the rescue itself. Jonas agreed, though every scar and aging joint protested the decision. The terrain between his hut and their settlement covered 30 miles of the planet's most brutal geography. Razor rock ridges, sucking bogs and wind-scoured plateaus. His body betrayed him within the first hour. The Verdians moved with fluid grace over sharp rocks that left his boots shredded. Their endurance seemed limitless, their breathing even while his own came in ragged gasps. The thinner atmosphere that never bothered him at lower elevations now burned in his lungs. Maya adjusted her pace to match his, though her healed arm still hung in its sling. She watched him with concern when he paused to catch his breath. She anticipated problems before they arose. When the path narrowed along a cliff face, she positioned herself between Jonas and the edge. When venom spitters nested in the overhang ahead, she warned the party with a series of soft clicks. She explained his limitations to the hunters in their own language, framing his slowness as careful observation rather than weakness. Her defense shifted their perception. He wasn't a burden, but a different kind of asset. The hunters became reluctant protectors. Two took point, clearing the worst obstacles. Another walked rearguard, watching for predators drawn by their slow progress. They didn't offer help directly, that would insult his pride, but they made the way easier. One hunter broke off thorn vines before Jonas reached them. Another diverted a small rockfall with well-placed throws. Their assistance came silently, almost invisibly. Each mile revealed new wonders. Bioluminescent fungi marked safe paths through bog areas. Rock formations sang in the wind, producing warnings about approaching weather. Maya translated the stone songs. A storm coming from the east, better to take the higher route. Jonas noted everything, adding to his mental map. The alien landscape began making sense in ways it never had during his solitary years. His solitude diminished with every step. The hunters shared water from their skins, a gesture of trust. They pointed out edible plants he'd overlooked, demonstrating preparation methods. One showed him how to read predator signs in the soil. Not just tracks, but chemical markers and broken vegetation patterns. The knowledge exchange felt natural, reciprocal. He taught them human tracking methods in return, how to spot disturbed leaves and bent twigs. By the third day, his body adapted. The muscle aches faded, his breathing found a sustainable rhythm. The hunters began consulting him about route choices, valuing his different perspective. When they faced a flooded ravine, Jonas suggested a crossing method using woven vines, a technique from Earth's rainforests. The hunters approved, their respect visible in the way they watched him work. They reached the valley rim at dusk on the fourth day. Lights glittered below in organized patterns, a settlement far larger than Jonas imagined. The lead hunter gestured toward the lights, then to Jonas. The meaning was clear. Welcome. Maya stood beside him, her good hand resting on his arm. The gesture felt protective, proud. This journey had tested more than physical limits. It proved his willingness to endure discomfort for community. The hunters no longer saw a castaway but someone who could contribute unique knowledge. His age became an asset rather than liability, the markers of experience rather than decline. The isolation that defined his existence had been replaced by something unfamiliar, yet deeply human: belonging. The path ahead led downward into gathered lights and unknown reception. But for the first time since crashing on this world, Jonas walked towards something rather than away from everything. Blue Valley smelled of wood smoke and curing hides. The hunter camp operated on patterns Jonas couldn't immediately decipher. Groups moved with purpose between dome-shaped shelters, their paths crossing at specific points like water flowing through channels. His presence disrupted these patterns. Conversation stopped when he approached. Work paused as Verdians watched him pass. The welcome felt real but cautious, like testing ice over unknown waters. Two figures approached differently. Sarai moved with the confident grace of a huntmaster, her eyes assessing without judgment. Kalen followed, younger but with the same open curiosity. They brought gifts, a woven blanket, a bowl of stew. Sarai placed the food in his hands directly, bypassing the normal ritual of setting it on the ground first. The gesture meant trust. Kalen mimed eating, then pointed to Jonas's mouth with a questioning look. Shared meals became language lessons with consequences. Jonas learned that eating quickly suggested greed. Leaving food unfinished implied dislike. The correct way was deliberate tasting, acknowledging each flavor. Sarai demonstrated how to hold the bowl, how to sip broth without sound. These weren't arbitrary rules. They showed respect for the hunters who provided, the cooks who prepared, the land that yielded. Each meal built trust through demonstrated understanding. Evening fires revealed their history. Elders told stories in clicking, melodic tones. Maya translated quietly beside Jonas, her voice soft but clear. The tales weren't just entertainment. They carried survival knowledge, cultural values, warnings about past mistakes. One story explained why they never hunted the six-horned beast during its mating season. Another described how their people first learned to navigate by magnetic sense from observing migration patterns. Mama became more than translator. She positioned herself as cultural ambassador, explaining context Jonas couldn't grasp alone. When an elder described the Great Division, when their people split into competing clans, she added details about current tensions. Her role shifted from rescued child to bridge between worlds. She filtered information, choosing what to translate fully, what to summarize, what to omit for now. Her most surprising act came during a story about family bonds. When the elder spoke of adoption rituals, Maya stood and placed her hand on Jonas's shoulder. She spoke clearly in Verdian, then translated for him. "He is my river father." The term carried weight. Someone who saves a life becomes family, responsible for guidance, protected in return. The declaration shifted his status instantly. Suspicious looks softened. Boundaries expanded to include him. Jonas earned his place through consistent respect. He asked permission before entering spaces. He mimicked their eating manners perfectly. He offered help with chores but waited for invitation. When hunters repaired a shelter, he fetched materials without being asked. When children gathered firewood, he carried the heaviest loads. His actions spoke louder than any words could. This gradual assimilation happened without surrender of his own identity. He maintained human ways where they worked better, but adopted Verdian customs when they served community harmony. The balance felt natural, not forced. His presence became normal. The human who learned their ways, taught some of his, protected their leader's daughter. The seat at the fire felt earned, not given. Colonial impulses were inverted. He integrated through observation and adaptation rather than imposing his own systems. The camp's rhythms adjusted to include his different pace and methods. What began as cautious welcome solidified into genuine inclusion. The Ghost Hunter clan arrived at dawn, their war paint black against green skin. They moved in tight formation, weapons bristling. Their leader stepped forward, his scarred face set in permanent disapproval. He spoke directly to the Blue Valley elders, ignoring Jonas completely. The message was clear. The human represented contamination. Their traditions demanded isolation, not integration. The presence of an alien threatened their way of life, their very identity. Kalen stepped between the factions, his voice calm but firm. He proposed the ancient trial, 3 tests to settle disputes without bloodshed. The Ghost Hunters agreed immediately. They designed challenges favoring Verdian strengths, endurance beyond human limits, skills developed over generations, knowledge only natives could possess. Each test would push Jonas beyond his physical capabilities, into territory where his alien nature would guarantee failure. The trial became a battleground of values. Endurance meant more than physical stamina. It tested mental fortitude under alien conditions. Skill wasn't just technique but instinct honed from childhood. Knowledge involved understanding this world in ways no outsider could. The Ghost Hunters assumed human fragility would break under these demands. They planned to expose Jonas as fundamentally unfit for their world. Jonas's solitary survival became his unexpected advantage. Years alone had forced adaptation they couldn't anticipate. Where they expected weakness, he had developed workarounds. Where they assumed ignorance, he had observed patterns they took for granted. His human perspective offered solutions they never considered. The very isolation they condemned had forged tools for this moment. The confrontation balanced nonviolent strategy against violent tradition. The trial allowed no weapons, no direct combat. Victory would come through outperforming, not overpowering. Jonas would need to win within their system, while demonstrating values they respected. The challenge wasn't to defeat them, but to earn their reluctant respect through merit alone. This test measured his adaptation to alien values more than alien environments. Could he embrace their definitions of strength? Would he respect traditions that excluded him? The trial demanded he prove worth through actions they recognized as valuable, not through human standards of success. Every move would be judged against cultural benchmarks he only partially understood. The ghost hunters laid out the terms. First test, swimming endurance in the freezing northern rivers. Second, cliff scaling using only natural handholds. Third, identifying medicinal plants blindfolded by scent alone. Each challenge favored native physiology and lifetime training. They watched Jonas for any sign of hesitation, any admission of inferiority. He accepted without debate. The decision surprised both clans. The Blue Valley hunters looked concerned. The ghost hunters looked satisfied. They expected failure, perhaps injury. Jonas saw something else, an opportunity to demonstrate that different didn't mean lesser, that adaptation could bridge biological divides. The trial would begin at first light. Preparation involved no practice, no special tools. Jonas spent the evening alone, mentally reviewing everything he'd learned about this world. Maya brought him food but didn't speak. Her presence said enough. Belief in his ability to navigate their world on their terms. The silent support felt stronger than any encouragement. This challenge would test more than physical capability. It measured cultural integration, willingness to operate within alien frameworks, respect for traditions not his own. The outcome would determine whether coexistence was possible, or if differences would forever divide them. The trial offered a path to prove worth through action rather than argument, through demonstrated respect rather than demanded acceptance. The northern river ran black with glacial melt, the current pulling like strong hands. Jonas stood shivering on the bank, the thin air already burning in his lungs. The swimming test demanded breath control he didn't possess and current knowledge he couldn't learn in weeks, let than hours. The ghost hunters watched from the opposite shore, their confidence visible in relaxed stances. They designed this perfectly. Talon represented Blue Valley, his green skin slick with protective oil that smelled of pine and salt. He entered the water without hesitation, his body streamlined for aquatic movement. Jonas followed, the cold shocking his system immediately. His human lungs struggled with the dense atmosphere, each breath feeling inadequate. The starting signal came, a sharp rock strike against metal. They pushed into the current. Talon moved with innate understanding of the water's patterns, his body riding hidden currents Jonas couldn't detect. His breathing rhythm matched the river's flow. Long exhales followed by quick inhales. Jonas fought the water instead of working with it, his strokes wasting energy against the relentless pull. The distance between them grew with each passing minute. The human body reached its limit quickly. Muscle fatigue set in, his limbs growing heavy and unresponsive. The cold numbed his extremities, making his kicks clumsy. Talon glanced back once, his black eyes showing no emotion, then increased his pace effortlessly. He finished the course with controlled grace, pulling himself onto the far bank while Jonas still struggled midway. Jonas focused on observation despite the struggle. He noted how Talon angled his body to use countercurrents, how he timed breaths with wave patterns. These weren't techniques he could master now, but knowledge he might use later. The loss became inevitable but not worthless. He stored every detail, building mental notes for future survival. The ghost hunter's satisfaction was palpable. They'd proven their point cleanly without argument. Human physical limitations made victory impossible in their arena. Their early advantage established the trial's seriousness. This wasn't ceremony, but genuine test of capability. They pressed their position, voices rising in confidence as Jonas finally dragged himself onto the bank, coughing up river water. Blue Valley claimed the first victory through native skill alone. Talon accepted congratulations with quiet dignity, his eyes occasionally drifting to where Jonas recovered on the stones. The win strengthened their position, but also highlighted the trial's inherent bias. Every challenge would favor Verdian biology and lifetime training. Jonas's human capabilities meant little here. This initial test demonstrated the fundamental inequality of the competition. The ghost hunters hadn't just designed challenges they could win. They'd created conditions where victory was biologically predetermined. Jonas's willingness to participate anyway spoke volumes about his commitment. He rose slowly from the bank, water streaming from his clothing, and prepared for the next challenge. The swimming defeat settled nothing except the obvious. He would need to win through means they hadn't anticipated, in ways they couldn't predict. The real test wasn't physical capability but adaptive thinking under pressure. The cliff face rose like a broken promise. All loose rock and hidden cracks, Jonas tested his first handhold, the sedimentary layers crumbling under his fingers. This climb demanded more than strength. It required reading stone like a language he only half understood. The ghost hunter climber moved with confidence, his four-fingered hands finding purchase where Jonas saw only smooth surfaces. The tension wasn't just about speed anymore. Every grip could mean a fall. Sarai climbed for Blue Valley, her movements economical and precise. She watched the ghost hunter's progress, noting his route choices. When he reached a difficult overhang, he committed to a risky, dynamic move. The stone shattered under his weight. He fell 15 feet, crashing against a ledge with a sickening thud. The impact would have broken human bones. The ghost hunter lay still, his breathing ragged. Sarai immediately changed course. Instead of pushing for the summit, she descended to the injured climber. Her own progress meant nothing now. She checked his injuries, broken arm, possible cracked ribs. She used her own harness to secure him to the wall, preventing further fall. The act wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Compassion is strategy. Some ghost hunters watching below murmured approval. Their rigid postures softened slightly. They recognized value in protecting one's own, even during competition. This wasn't weakness but strength channeled differently. Jonas observed everything from his position, learning from Sarai's choices. Her intervention changed the dynamics of the test completely. His own slower pace became advantage. Where the Verdians moved quickly, trusting their instincts, Jonas tested each hold carefully. He spotted unstable sections they overlooked, avoiding potential disasters. His human caution balanced their physical confidence. He charted a safer route up the left face, avoiding the crumbling rock that had caused the fall. The Verdian resilience showed in the injured climber. Despite broken bones, he remained conscious, helping Sarai with his good arm. Their cooperation across clan lines spoke louder than any victory could. Jonas reached the summit through careful planning rather than speed. His path took longer but avoided all major hazards. Sarai finished her rescue operation, then completed the climb with deliberate grace. Blue Valley claimed victory through combined metrics, successful summit, plus demonstrated values. The ghost hunters acknowledged this with reluctant respect. Their previous certainty wavered. The test proved compassion didn't hinder performance, it enhanced overall outcome. Nobody died. Nobody suffered permanent injury. The competition remained honorable. This challenge revealed character through action rather than words. Sarai's choice to aid a rival demonstrated Blue Valley's core philosophy, community over individual achievement. Jonas's methodical approach showed that different perspectives could achieve same ends through alternate paths. The ghost hunters began questioning their assumptions about strength and weakness. The resolution settled more than the immediate competition. It established precedent for future interactions. Compassion could be tactical advantage. Caution could prevent disasters that speed caused. The cliff face became classroom, the stones teaching lessons about balance between boldness and care. The true victory wasn't about who reached the top first, but how they climbed together despite being competitors. This shift in understanding would influence all future dealings between the clans, creating possibilities for cooperation where only confrontation existed before.